to get some scientia certa, cognitio certa, certain knowledge. Like when you put your finger in an outlet, it fries you. Put your finger in another outlet, it also fries you. Another one, it fries you. And then someone tells you that's called electricity. But then you get a science. You understand that when there's electricity flowing through wires and you touch the wires, you get fried. That's called science. If you only know the factual experience, then you've never seen that outlet in the back wall there, never seen this one before, so you have no way of knowing if you're gonna get fried. You've never seen that orange extension cord before, because yours is a different one. So you have to lick that one, see if it fries you too, and lick the other one, see if that fries you too. So if you only have cognitio certa, you are not able to have true knowledge. Human beings of science. The thing to remember about science is that science is the study of the real world. So one of the great lies of Satan in the last 500 years, particularly since modernism in the last 150 years, is to tell you that science is for smart people who go to universities and study metaphysics. What's metaphysics? That's like metaphysical, man. That's metaphysical. When you hear something's metaphysical, that means it's way out there. So you got to be on a trip with some drugs, and then you can do some metaphysics. So metaphysics is on a trip doing drugs in the clouds. And if you don't want to pay for the drugs, go to university and study there. So the fact is, then you can become metaphysical. But that's not what metaphysics is. Fact is that metaphysics is at the bottom. It's what holds everything up. And so metaphysics is the most important of all the sciences because it's a science beyond and beneath the physical that holds all things up. Science is a study of reality. Science has no purpose if there's not a reality. Science can't exist without reality. Cognitio is knowledge, just knowing something, just knowing a fact and knowing a fact, knowing a fact. Faith is science. And we human beings know through science. And so St. Thomas points out here in the first article, there's a little book there, the on faith, question 1 on faith. This is from the Secunda Secundae. So St. Thomas Aquinas, by the way, he wrote this book because he said back in the 1200s, he died in 1274. He said, I know that a lot of you young seminarians can't study deep theology because you're basically stupid. So I'm writing a very simple book called the Summa Theologica for morons. It's for people that just don't get it. And he's going to give a very simple explanation. And summa means the highest, but in fact, it means that's what a summary is. When you know the details, you know all the little facts. When you have a summary, you can see many facts in one view. A summary is seen from a higher point and getting many facts in one view. So he wrote this book in the 1200s for people that just aren't that bright and that can give a more simple explanation of our faith and how things work. The Summa Theologica. This is the principal work of the Catholic Church after the Bible, the Summa Theologica. And he was inspired by God when he put together this book, and it is in 3 parts, which is simply called the Prima Pars, the Secunda Pars, and the Tertia Pars. That's it, first, second, third. But the second part is divided itself into 2 parts. So we have the Prima Pars, the first part, then we got the Prima Secundae, first part of the second, and the Secunda Secundae. We're now in the beginning of the Secunda Secundae when you arrive at this question. And then the Tertia Pars. He died before completing the Tertia Pars. He had already taught everything, of course. He died at the age of 49 before completing the Tertia Pars. And so the completion of the Tertia Pars we call the supplementum, the supplement, because it is St. Thomas. But before he could write those final parts of the Tertia Pars, he died. So therefore, we divide the Summa into Prima Pars, Prima Secundae, Secunda Secundae, the Tertia Pars, and the supplement. 5 books. For him, it's only 3 books, but 5 books. And the second part is very large because it tells with virtue and its opposite vices. So the beginning with God, the Prima Pars, God the Creator, like who God is, God the Creator, De Deo Uno, then God in His Trinity, De Deo Trino, then the creation of the world, and then angels and men, and then the Old Testament, and then we go into the Secunda Pars, and then there we go to the nature of man. What are we doing? We're trying to seek happiness. Man is made for happiness, beatitude. And remember, each thing is built upon everything else. It's exactly like the rungs of a ladder. If you're on the 32nd rung, you need to make sure that the two legs and the other parts are all standing. So when you're standing on the top of a ladder and you're up here, these rails have to be holding from there to the ground and there to the ground, and so do those the steps. And if they're not, you collapse. Your standing here is 100% dependent upon the thing that came before. And so one of the things to remember is we're in the secunda secundae. It depends on everything that came before it. It's built on everything that came before it. When you build a skyscraper, the 75th floor requires there to be 74, 73, 72, 71, 70, all the way down to 0 on the foundation. And so this is the same with the Summa. We're now well into the Summa, and in the consideration of man's life. And so we'll have to go back. Actually, Thomas says here, question 1 on science. What exactly is a science? And here you see that if you see on, I guess it's page 1 in your little booklet here, just quickly, question 1 of faith, de fide. So on the virtue of faith. And so every having to treat now the theological virtues, we shall begin with faith, and secondly, we shall speak of hope, and thirdly, charity. The Secunda Secundae deals with the virtues: faith, hope, charity, prudence, justice, temperance, fortitude, and then the states of life, and then the contrary vices. And so when you get to that, that's the thickest part. That's Prima Secundae. I mean, that's the whole Secunda Secundae. It's a lot. All the virtues is the thickest of all the 5 books, going through the virtues, and it starts with the principle of everything. The 3 theological virtues are the principles of the spiritual life. So the common example we always give about principles: you have a staircase, and you've got, say, God at the top of the staircase. Now, we want to get to God. There's a man, he gets to God. There's another possibility, which is a bird trying to get to God. And then there's a vehicle, car, trying to get to God. Now, does the staircase work for all 3 of them? No, it doesn't. So we want to get to the top of the staircase. For human beings, we need a staircase. Why? Because we got a principle that's based on the nature of man called the principle of walking. Men walk. I love the ones in China because it's got all the communist stuff on the walls. And in the future, your thumbprint is going to be your means of paying. In the future, you won't need a credit card. In the future, you'll be a complete slave. And then they advertise that to you. You're going to the Hong Kong airport. So you walk down the gangway, and then you have the, okay. Take a few more back in case somebody else is missing them also. Okay. So these are principles. The principles are applied in every step till you get to God. Now, but in third, he has a different principle. He requires air to get there. And a car requires a road. Now, why is it that God never changes? The end never, the top of the staircase never changes. But if you're a man, you have to walk there. If you're a bird, you have to fly there. And if you're a car, you have to drive there. Now, why is it that car, bird, and man are different? Why do they have different principles? Because they have different natures. Man is a rational, political animal. Man is an animal with reason and free will and meant to live in society. My father mentioned in the sermon today. He's meant to live in society. Man's a political animal. If you take a dog, take him with his mommy and daddy, take him with all the dogs, bring him back in 2 years, he's still going to bark. He's going to be like every other dog. He doesn't need his neighbors. Yeah, go ahead and let it close. Yeah, all right. It'll close on its own. It'll close on its own, right? Okay. Right. So that the dog, it needs, it doesn't need it to learn from other dogs. But human beings are political animals. Have a baby taken away from his mommy, and then have that baby brought back when he's 30 years old and meet somebody. He can't talk. He can't reason. He can't function as a human being. He's done. He can't be helped. Because man by nature is political. He's got to be with other people to become fully human. And so man, God is always the same, but man's different from birds different from fire is different from whatever, a worm and a fish. So therefore, they have, yeah. Just what are you doing? You panic later, brother. Don't worry about it, brother. Let's go, right? Yeah. All right. Just make my brother. Make sure it's supported on the sides. Don't do the heresy of one brick. Make sure it's supported on the side. Yeah. Okay, all right. Just put it back on the side over here. No, that's too high, not strong enough. It was too, no, no. The other one, just bring over to this side. We may move it. No, no, I'm too far. Just where it is. Where it is fine. Put it where it is. Yeah, then we'll adjust it later. Okay. So then the principle of walking, right? That's the principle of structure. Don't put this little bitty thin piece of metal and all the weight on that and put the hole in my beautiful bucket. Okay. So, but in any case, so that these three different principles, they're going to get to different conclusions. The human beings were rational creatures, and we have to go to the conclusion that way. All of this is understood. Now he says, now when we get to the virtue of faith, well, what is faith, right? So then, when we consider faith, says St. Thomas, treatise on faith, fourfold. Faith itself, corresponding gifts, knowledge, and understanding. There are 7 gifts, 7 gifts of the Holy Ghost. And the gifts are given by God to assist us in the practice of the virtues. And the principles, we get to the principles of the spiritual life are called, by the way, so I was trying to get to the theological virtues, right? The principles are present everywhere. Principles all throughout. And if they're not there, everything collapses. If you have a beautiful staircase and you got nice, strong steps, but you become paralyzed, it's useless. You have to be able to walk. If you don't have the principle of walking, all of this is useless. So the principles are there always. What are the principles of the divine life? The principles of divine life are called the theological virtues. This is like the muscles and the legs of the supernatural life. And they are faith, hope, and charity. St. Thomas does everything in order. So what's the first virtue upon which every other virtue is built? Faith, hope, and charity. Faith, hope, and charity are like walking. They're the principles. So when you're on the 12th step, if you're without charity, you're not going to heaven. If you're without hope, you're not going to heaven. And without faith, you're not going to heaven. So no matter what step you're on, if you become completely paralyzed, you can no longer continue at the steps. All you can do is fall down. So the principles the principle means first, the things on the bottom that hold up everything. The reason faith is not one of the virtues. Faith is the principle that must be in every single virtue. Like St. Thomas gives an example of the 4 cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude, which are the virtues that help us deal with our neighbors. And he says there are 2 virtues you should never confuse: prudence and prudence. There's supernatural prudence, which is moved by faith. This prudence gets us to God. There is natural prudence, which is moved only by natural reason and natural desires. Faith is useless to get to God. Prudence, I mean. Prudence cannot get to God unless it's got supernatural faith in it. It's like a little bouncy house down there. They're down there. You can't bounce them because there's no air in the bouncy house. And if you take the air out of the bouncy house, it's just a bunch of useless plastic laying on the ground, and it causes Father Valentine to have an emotional breakdown. In fact, I forbade him to drive down I-65 last year because the largest bouncy house in the world happens to be in Kentucky. It's 3 acres. And they put it up once in a while on I-65. When I saw that last year, I said, Father Valentine cannot, absolutely not go to Louisville. So I forbade him for a month. I didn't know what was going on. I said, no, just go to E-Town. No, just go to bar stuff. No, just go to E-Town. Just go to bar. Just go to Bowling Green. I totally forgot it. Because he would have the 3-acre bouncy house sitting here and be the cancel ordination. It's a huge bounce. It's incredible. It's got everything in it. No, don't say anything. Be quiet. Rather the Valentine present. Yeah. So, but in any case, and it worked. He still hasn't seen it, so we're okay for now. Well, no, still haven't seen it. Still only heard rumors about it. No, it's not in town now. Okay. So the air in the bouncy house, right? So that the air, without the air, it's useless. The principle is not like the first step way back there, and then you leave it behind. Principle holds us up always. It's a case of walking. You can't walk, you're paralyzed, staircases are useless. Now, if you can walk and you're not paralyzed, then it's better to not have a paper or balsa wood staircase going up the moon, because you'll fall down and die. Better if it's not too skinny, better if it's not too tall. Then you can talk about all the other things that we talk about with staircases. We won't discuss that now. But here are just the principles. The faith is the first principle of the supernatural life of getting to God. See, dogs, they are naturally good. Always go to God. That's all they can do, is be good and praise God. Because of this, they have no right to be rewarded. Human beings have been given free will, and we can choose to reject God, and we can choose to accept God. Since we can choose to accept Him, we can receive the reward of heaven. What's the first principle of acceptance? The virtue of faith. So when St. Athanasius says, without doubt, whoever does not keep the faith whole and undefiled, without doubt, he must perish eternally in hellfire. That's the reality. First words of the Athanasian Creed. And so, well, then is the object of faith. So whether the object of faith is the first truth is the first question. So in laying out the articles here about faith, we've got knowledge, understanding, gifts, which God gives us to help us practice the faith, the opposite vices, which are many, mainly the main ones, unbelief, heresy, and apostasy, and then there'll be smaller sins against the faith, and then of the precepts concerning this, commandments concerning this virtue. So under the first head, there are 10 points of inquiry. Whether the object of faith is the first truth. Number 2, whether the object of faith is something complex or not incomplex. Whether it is a thing or a proposition. Whether anything false can come under faith. Number 3. 4, whether the object of faith can be anything seen. Because remember what St. Paul says, faith is the belief of things unseen and the substance of things to be hoped for. So if faith is the belief of things unseen, can you have faith in things you see? So yes, the answer is yes. Whether it can be anything known, whether the things to believe should be divided into a certain number of articles. Number 6, whether the same articles are of faith for all times. Number 7, number 8 of the number of articles, and number 9 of the manner of embodying the articles in a symbol. Number 10, who has right to propose a symbol of faith, and so the Pope is the one who has a right to propose a symbol of faith. And the apostles gave us the Apostles' Creed, and then the popes have added other creeds to fill out the Apostles' Creed against heretics of different times. So and then let's go. What then? So St. Thomas, and the plan of the Summa, in case you're not familiar, every question of the Summa is, for instance, question 2 of the Prima Pars. Is there a God? Answer, no, there is not a God. Number one objection. I think there's 6 objections, 6 reasons why there's not a God. St. Thomas begins by asking a question. He always begins the answer with the objections. So if he says, is there a God? No, it seems there's not a God. That means the answer is yes, there is. So, and so is Jesus Christ two natures? I mean, one person and 2 natures. It seems Jesus Christ is not 2 person and 1 nature, 2 natures and 1 person. The answer is always the opposite. So if the objection says the answer is yes, that means the true answer is no. If the objection says the answer is no, it means the true answer is yes. But St. Thomas always begins with the objections. Is there a God? Well, it seems there's not a God, because if there is God, there would be no evil in the world. But there is evil in the world, therefore it seems that there is not a God. And so he continues through all the objections. And then he explains and proves, to the 5 proofs, for instance, that there is God. And then he answers the objections. So there's always objections, answer to the question, which is called the corpus, or the main body of the article, and then the reply to the objections. And so here in the Summa, what the object of faith is first truth. We've seen the object of faith is not the first truth, which means it is. But the object of faith is that which is supposed to have to be believed. Okay, so the object of faith is one word, the objections there. And on the contrary, Saint Dionysius says that the faith is about the simple and everlasting truth. Now, this is the first truth, therefore the object of faith is the first truth. The object of faith is God, the first truth. And so I answer that. The object of every cognitive habit includes 2 things. First, that which is known materially. So here we go through, we mentioned it last year, the 4 causes. So the example we give, the table. So this is the table. Table has 4 causes. So Thomas is talking about the causes here. There are 4 causes of a table. There is the material cause and the intrinsic cause. There's the material cause. There's the formal cause. And there's the efficient cause. And then there's the final cause. Right? 2 of these causes are extrinsic. 2 causes are intrinsic, inside. It means you're the material cause. So the material cause of a table equals wood or plastic, or it's any number of things, etc. The formal cause is what a table is. That is table, right? The efficient cause, the one that makes the table, right? Equals the maker of the table. Carpenter. The final cause is the core, the why of the table, right? So dinner, right? Place for dinner, okay? So you have the material cause, formal cause, physical cause, final cause. Like I mentioned last year, like St. Thomas points out, of the 4 causes, the least cause is the material cause, right? Because wood can be used for a table, wood can be used for a wall, wood can be used for a door, can be used for anything. The material is the material stuff that you're making something out of. The material cause. So there are 4 causes of a table. Well, there's 4 causes of the science of faith. And the most important cause equals the formal cause. What is faith? And why do we say it's therefore, let's tell you when you go against that, it's a mortal sin against faith. So what is faith? Father, but yeah. Oh yes, we did put the correct. Right, sure. And you'll take care of that. Okay. For confirmations, we have a few that need to be confirmed. We've been working like chickens with the head cut off the last few weeks, and we had multiple, even just everything, marriages, funerals, and preparing for the ordinations, and building our beautiful little lean-to over here. And we've been doing the chicken with the head cut off routine more than usual the last few weeks. And but we have the confirmation schedule, and we have talked to some of about the confirmations, but we need to put together the confirmation confirmandi. So Father Midgley will take care of that. We have the confirmands to be confirmed on Sunday just before the first Mass. This is Father Midgley. Yeah, Father Midgley, sorry. So, and so Father Midgley will take care of that. And so we need to get, how do you want to do it? We got to get all your paper, who's being confirmed. We need the copies of baptismal certificates and all those type of things, names, ranks, and social security numbers, and all need to go to. Yeah, I want each of you to personally see Father Midgley. He'll be around, throughout the next few days, and then see who needs to be confirmed. Now, the two people, some of them are being confirmed for the first time, and really been 10 years old and so on, 10 and 11, 12 and older. Then there's others who are confirmed in the Novus Ordo. The Novus Ordo confirmation is invalid because they don't mention the purpose of the confirmation in the form of the sacrament. And so according to St. Pope Leo XIII back in 1896, the new confirmation rite is invalid. They say only receive the Holy Spirit, which you receive in all 7 sacraments. So with the confirmation, to say what you're receiving, which is to be strengthened, to be an adult. There has to be some way of talking of strengthening, some way of speaking of an adulthood in the church. But that is not there in the form of the new sacrament of confirmation. So according to Leo XIII, it's invalid. So then we do a so-called conditional confirmation for all those that were confirmed in the Novus Ordo. And then after 1968. So then there we simply so you can talk to Father Midgley concerning confirmation. You need to see him throughout afterwards and when you get the chance. Okay. And then how's the project going out there? There's also at lunchtime, we're going to have food here and also out there on the porch. This will be phase 1, and there will be phase 2 for the lunch, so for lunch, and then also for dinner. So, but in any case, continuing here, so then the formal cause. So the formal cause of what a thing is: table, wood, the material it is made out of. The physical cause, the maker, final cause, why it's made, the purpose of dinner. So regarding to faith, the purpose, of course, is God. The one who gives us the faith is God. And then the material cause of the things that we believe in the faith, and the formal cause is the first truth. So here we get to that. So we talked about the what is the material and formal cause of faith. Every science, says St. Thomas here on page 2, every cognitive habit includes 2 things. First, that which is materially known, and it is a material object. And then secondly, the aspect, formal object. So when we say every science, you have, in a science, every science has a material object. A normal example is, this is my version of some kind of a rhinoceros dog, or whatever, a dog, okay. There's a dog. Dog is a material object. Dog is a thing you study. Now, what science can study a dog? So a science has a material object. We remember now in a very materialistic society, but it also has a formal object. And that's divided in 2 parts, quod and quo. So every science has these things. When I know something, first is the thing you know. Dog, right? So what is a dog? One of the great power Saint Pius X points out the modernism. He says modernists, they tell one very great lie, really many, many great lies. But one of them is that's not a matter of faith. That's not a matter of religion. What's the word matter? The material object. Material object. I'm getting worse at it. Apparently the seminarians practice sometimes, because I often go like this without looking at the board. Sometimes when I'm not there, they go and they see if they can hit the right? I very often point at the board without looking, right? And so, and but in any case, the formal of the material object is the matter, the thing you're studying. It's just the thing you're looking at. We're talking here about dog. Modernists say that there are some things a matter of faith. It's a matter of science. What's a dog? A dog is a matter of biology. Biologists know about dogs. What do you know about dogs? Did you study biology? What do you know about the health of dogs? Are you a veterinarian? Veterinarians know about dog health. Biologists know about dogs. And religion is about God and Jesus and whatever he said. And so religion has nothing to do with dogs. It's got nothing to do with the material world. So when you hear the word material, remember what material is. Material is the stuff by itself. So in Lowe's and Home Depot, there's material houses, there's material chairs, there's material walls, there's material everything. But if you want to go to a restaurant, don't go to Lowe's. You're not going to be able to sit on the 2x6s, and you don't want to sit on the nails. The fact is that the material of a restaurant is there. A restaurant is not there. The material is never the thing. Wood is not table. Dog is not science. Dog is the real thing. And so the material is just the real thing that you are studying or using. And what makes it very real is the form, what you're going to do with it. If you want to make a boat, you're going to not use certain materials. If you want to make an airplane, you're going to use different materials. The material is just material, and you can use the same material for different things. The material object equals the stuff that you're studying, things itself. So when dog, for instance, a material object, he's an object of how many sciences? Every science. We mentioned about the dog of Tobias, famous dog of Tobias in Tobias chapter 11. In Tobias chapter 11, Tobias returns home after a long time away from home. And in chapter 11 tells us, and the dog ran out and greeted him, and he wagged his tail. And the dog wagged his tail. That's what we learn in Tobias chapter 11. What's that got to do with religion? There are heretics 800 years ago, 1,400 years ago, St. Augustine, who talked about that dog. Says scripture is filled with useless information. Example, Tobias chapter 11. And the dog wagged his tail. It's a short book. It's got, why would you bother putting that useless information in there about the dog wagging his tail? So we mention that dog often, Tobias chapter 11. St. Augustine says there's nothing useless in sacred scripture. Now, what can we know about the dog wagging his tail? The scripture says the dog wagged his tail. We now know through faith that a dog wags his tail. Dogs can move their tails back and forth. They can wag their tails. And we know this because we've seen dogs wag their tails. We learned this because you studied a biology book on doggies. But you also know it because God said that the dog wagged his tail. So the dog wagging his tail is a theological dog because he's in the book of Tobias. He's a biological dog because you can study him in biology. It can be an artistic dog because you can draw a picture of him and make him a part of art. So the dog can be used for, it can be a mathematical dog, use them to count dogs when you're falling asleep instead of counting sheep when you fall asleep. Nowadays, people don't like to count sheep anymore, so you count dogs. So, but the fact is, the dog can be used for math. The dog can be used. So the dog is the material object, and it's just the material object. The heretics say what matters most is the material. This is important. Material individuates. Material divides. Satan always focuses on the material. And when he does this, and gets us to do this, makes it easy to create divisions. You want to keep up with the Joneses because they got 2 swimming pools and you've only got 1. They got 5 cars and you've only got 3. So when you look at materially, you count the cars, you count the swimming pools, you count the pocketbook, and you have all kinds of problems on your hands because you're looking at things materially. Material cause is a very important tool used by Satan to destroy souls. When we say we're in a materialistic society in the last couple hundred years, it's because not just because we like stuff and we're tempted by having more stuff. Our brains think that the material object of anything is the most important. It is not. So St. Thomas explained that. So what about faith? So an object of every cognitive habit include 2 things. First, that which is known materially and is a material object, so to speak. The second, that whereby it is known, this is the formal aspect of the object. Thus, in the science of geometry, the conclusions are what is known materially. So 16. And while the formal aspect of the science is the mean of demonstration, 4 times 4 equals 16. So you have so 2 times 4 equals 8, right? So that you have 2 plus 2 equals 4. So that you understand how addition, how multiplication, and how division works. That's science, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. That is what math is. So, and that the answer of 17, 21, 32, 14, 14 might be the answer to the first question, but it may not be the answer to the second question, right? So that occasionally it is the same answer. 2 times 2 equals 4, and 2 plus 2 equals 4. But 2 times 3 and 2 plus 3 don't equal the same thing. And so that every now and then they'll match. But when you consider things materially, you're going to get into an absolute disaster. So the same is true of faith. So when we consider faith, this formal aspect of the object is nothing else than the first truth. For the faith in which we are speaking does not ascend to anything except because it's revealed by God. Here we go to what we say in the act of faith. Oh my God, I believe these truths and all the truths which the Holy Catholic Church believes and teaches, because thou hast revealed them, who canst neither deceive nor be deceived. That's the object of faith. What has happened now is we forgot that simple formal object of faith. What do I believe? I believe whatever God has revealed because God revealed it. And that's it. That's faith. Faith is to believe because God revealed. And if we don't believe because God revealed, we don't have faith. That's why as we travel through theology, all we have to do is say, did God say? Yes, he did. Bam, that's a matter of faith. Because why do I believe? So he says the object of faith formally equals the first truth, that is God speaking. So that we believe God speaking. The first truth is God, of course, under the aspect of truth. First truth equals God speaking. Or God said. Once you hear God said, we know that whatever comes after that is true and is infallibly true, no matter what. God said, that's the first truth. So when God said there are 42 generations between Adam and Christ, when he said, the example Biblical Church uses, quoting St. Augustine, Abraham had 2 sons, Isaac and what's his name? Ishmael, right? He had Isaac and Ishmael, right? Why do we do not distinguish between these 2 truths? Because why do we believe that Ishmael exists? Because God said. Why do you believe Isaac exists? Because God said. So remember, the first truth is the primary object. What is the formal object? What makes a table table? A combination of the other three things, all the other three things combined together make table. What makes faith? The other three things combined together makes faith. We believe the 12 articles of the Creed. St. Thomas says there's two ways to divide the Creed, 12 articles or 14 articles. He explains each way. From the Apostles' Creed, I believe in God the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. So you can divide that into 12 articles, the way we normally divide it, because you can also divide the same into 14 articles. But there's a 14 or 12 articles of the faith. God said, why do you believe these 12 articles of the faith? Because God said. Now, when the faith becomes material, then all this changes. And we say, well, it doesn't really matter what God said. About God says about spiritual things, I believe what God said. But when God says about anything else, then I need to investigate and use my own reason and figure out whether it's true or not. And we used to believe, for instance, that the world is about 6,000 years old. And Adam was born 4,000 years before Christ. And and that there's these 42 generations between Adam and Christ, and that there was a worldwide flood because God said. However, with modernism, we now believe it depends on the material. What matters is the material. When God speaks about spiritual things, love your neighbor, believe in God, follow spiritual commandments, we believe those things. But when God says there was a great flood that covered 14 cubits over the highest mountain, what does that got to do with the price of peace? When God said 14 cubits over the highest mountain, I mean, okay, you know, Noah's Ark wasn't that mobile. The world was pretty big. And what was he doing? Taking a rope, you know, 3 fathoms, 4 fathoms, 14 cubits. No, God knew, and God told no. It went 14 cubits over the highest mountain. Why do I know it went 14 cubits over the highest mountain? Because God said. Now, the modernist says, well, it's not what God said, except what God says about spiritual material. And he's talking about natural material, mathematical material, biological material, psychological material, other material that's not spiritual. We got to go to the experts. Materialism has destroyed our world. They weren't materialists in the time of St. Thomas Aquinas or in St. Athanasius. Whosoever does not hold this faith whole and undefiled, without doubt, he shall perish. So says St. Athanasius. So we have to hold this faith. And what is the faith? The faith is, I believe whatever God said. And so, and the formal object is more important than the material object. The material object is important, but it's number 4, the least important of the 4 things, because of the degree of importance. So, for instance, as a Catholic, you should all know that you should all believe that there are 5 notions in the Blessed Trinity. What are the 5 notions? Probably be hard to pass that test. Well, you believe in the 5 notions. Right? The most difficult part of theology is the study of what's called De Deo Trino, the study of God 3 in 1. Because we know that 3 can never be 1 and it never will be 1. That's metaphysically impossible, which means God can't do it. Yet we also know that there are 3 persons in only one God. The 1 is not 3, and the 3 are not 1, and they never can be, and they never will be. But there are 3 persons in one God. So to describe that and understand that requires a great deal of understanding. But to believe it is simple. I believe whatever God said. And he said, there are three persons in one God. I know that three cannot be one. I know that one cannot be three. But I know certainly God can never lie. And God said, there are three persons in one God. There must be some explanation. So theologians and saints, they will help describe to us what God said and explain how it's not a heresy and not a lie. For instance, St. Patrick, his famous example, when he explained to the Irish that there are three persons in one God, they thought he was insane. So you cannot have three persons in one God. It must be three gods. And he picked up the three-leaf clover. That you see how there are three leaves, but only one clover. So likewise, there are three persons, but only one God. And the leaf is not the clover, and the other leaf is not the clover, and the other leaf is not the clover, and the stem is not the clover, the whole is the clover. So there are three leaves, but only one clover. So likewise, there are three persons. The Father is not the Son is not the Holy Ghost is not the Son, not the Father, and the Father is not God in his divinity, in his personhood. He is God in his nature. So there is God, the Father is God, and the Son is God, and the Holy Ghost is God. So there are three persons in one God, like there's three leaves in a clover. And so we can explain in a way to show that it's not impossible. We can explain in a way to show that it can be understood in some simple manner, but the actual meaning is beyond our comprehension. Hence the same famous miracle of St. Augustine concerning this matter of the three-person Trinity. He's the greatest theologian in the understanding of the Trinity. And his famous miracle is one day he had a deep understanding of how to explain the three in one and so on. And he was kind of proud of himself when he was walking down the beach of the Mediterranean Sea. And he saw a boy with a small glass going to the water of the ocean, picking it up and pouring it into a hole. Going back to picking it up and pouring it in a hole. He said, what are you doing? Well, I'm putting that sea into this one. He said, what are you? That's impossible. He said, and the boy said, it's easier for me, Augustine, to put all the seas in the world into this hole than for you to understand the Trinity. And he disappeared. So we can have a simple knowledge to show that it is not irrational. We can have a knowledge to show that the heretics are liars and they're false when they attack against us. We cannot understand fully or comprehend what three and one and three really means in the Blessed Trinity. This is the principal teaching of the Holy Faith given to us by God. But every teaching comes from the same God. And we believe because God said. The formal object of faith equals the first truth, God speaking. But there are material objects. So he continues then with and what about this faith, right? Hence the mean on which faith is based is divine truth, right? And then they continue there, do not in a sense of but also many other, hence the mean on which faith is based is the divine truth. However, we consider materially a material cause, the things to which faith assents, they include not only God, but also many other things. So we believe God said. But that's not enough to say I believe what God said. I also must believe the things he said. That's the material. Why do I believe the material? Because of the formal, what God said. God said it, that's why I believe it. What did he say? I believe it. He said, let there be light. I believe God made light. He said, this is my beloved son. I believe Jesus Christ is his beloved son. So on and so forth. So there are many things that he said. So if we consider the formal aspect of the object, if we consider materially the things to which this faith assents, they include not only God, but also many other things, which nevertheless do not come under the assent of faith, except as bearing some relation to God, inasmuch as to wit, through certain effects of divine operation, man is helped on his journey towards the enjoyment of God. Consequently, from this point of view, also the object of faith is in a way the first truth, and inasmuch as nothing comes under faith except in relation to God, even as the object of medical art is health, for it considers nothing save in relation to health. We consider so we remember this dog. The dog is the same, right? We know that a dog is a real creature, right? But he can be an object of art. Some children do some beautiful drawings of a dog. So this is that more like an aardvark? What is that closer to? Armadillo. Yes, armadillo. Yeah. And when I was in St. Mary's, we went to St. Lawrence. We went to Kansas City. We went to Lawrence. What do you call it? To Kansas, Kansas University of Kansas. And there was a professor who, for 30 years, was studying aardvarks. Not aardvarks, armadillos. He said the armadillo, when it gets scared, it jumps up. And now there's millions of armadillos dying because semis are driving on the highway. And if they stayed on the ground, they'd be healthy. But the truck comes, the truck dodges it, so it underneath, and sure enough, the armadillo jumps just in time to become a part of the front green. That's an armadillo. So this guy got thousands of armadillos, paid for by the government, put them in the University of Kansas. One of the many reasons why you should not like blue jay. What do you call those guys? Blue jays, right? And he's killing them. So he has a truck go through, and he's trying to train the armadillos to evolve past jumping. So here comes a big, huge concrete thing at 100 miles an hour. Armadillo sees it. He's an armadillo. And then he does another one. And he spent 30 years murdering armadillos for the American government to teach them. They have vocations. Right? So, in any case, so that's what he's doing. He's training them to try to jump differently, and it ain't working. All he's doing is murder. That's why you haven't seen an armadillo in Texas for 30 years. He killed them all. They're in Kansas dead. But he murdered them. He's trying to get them to learn to evolve. Can't you evolve? It's not working. So, but the material object is the real thing. That's a dog. We're talking about a dog here. So if you decide, little Teresa comes to you and says, "Mommy, what's that?" That's a dog. Wait a minute, it's a dog. So that doesn't work. That won't match Fido. To explain to him, this is not really a very good drawing of a dog. Why? Because this doesn't fit the material reality. So material object is the least important of the four objects, but it's still important. So the material thing, the real thing out there is dog. And he's studied by art. Well, this isn't very good, but better than that. So you can judge the art. Who does a better job of drawing a dog that matches the reality? So material object has some bearing, the matter has some bearing, but since St. Thomas says that we're talking about second matter, which means it has form in it, so that there is only one object of faith, which is God speaking. But there can be multiple material things that he tells us that we must believe. These are going to be eventually enumerated into the 12 articles of the Creed. And so that, and the formal object equals, I believe because God said. Hence, we teach children in the virtue of the prayer of the act of faith. We learn this as a child. We should always learn the real one, not abbreviated version. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of the universe. I believe in the truths Holy Catholic Church believes and teaches, because thou hast revealed them, who canst neither deceive nor be deceived. That is what faith is. And so then but there could other sciences consider it a different way. So the metaphysics, for instance, considers what a dog is. That's why metaphysics and philosophy are the most important sciences. All other sciences, these are universal sciences. Only three universal sciences. Philosophy, its highest part, which is metaphysics, and theology, which is philosophy with a different spelling. Study of all things and what they are in themselves. What is a dog? What on earth is a dog? So material object, material object equals the thing the science studies, and this dog can be studied by theology. but perform under a certain aspect. So biology is only considered in the dog, interested in the dog, so far as the dog is revealed by God, created by God, and found in divine revelation, or connected to divine revelation. So there's a lot of options there. So the material, the formal object we consider a dog, not everything there is to know about a dog. Dog as revealed by God, because what's theology? It's about believing what God said. We find there are dogs in sacred scripture. The dog also, as is everything else, is created by God. So every single thing that exists is a material object of theology. For instance, biology, botany considers material objects of all plants, only plants, but not rocks, not animals, not the stars, right? Biology considers all living animals, but philosophy and theology consider all things, period. So philosophy is the scientiam rerum indium, the science of all things to their deepest, highest causes. So philosophy, to study everything, and theology, everything. That's why a priest on a journey to the priesthood, he has to study philosophy. He has to know the nature of things. What is the nature of dog? What is the nature of rock? What's the nature of a vaccine? What is the nature of an action? Getting up in the morning. What's the nature of breathing? We got to know the nature of all things that are and all things that move. And then we will be able to say what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's true, what's false. So the philosophy is the most important of the sciences. It's called the queen of the sciences. Studying the nature of things the way they really are. Theology is above philosophy. Philosophy is called the handmaid of theology. And philosophy is the queen of all the sciences. They all depend on it. That's why, for instance, I mentioned in the funeral sermon the other day about what the people call scientists, modern scientists, but in fact they're just morons. And no matter, the scientists are trying to find the smallest thing. Democritus called it the atom, A-T-O-M, the atom, about 400 BC. Because the very smallest thing is called the atom, of which there's nothing smaller. And everything in the universe is made out of atoms. In 1801, forget the name of the scientist, he discovered what he thought was the smallest thing, and therefore he called it the atom. What happened? They got a more powerful microscope and discovered that there are millions of parts inside of an atom. And they get more powerful microscopes, they can discover there's more. Why? Because the infinitely small and the infinitely great are without number. We have an infinitely small and infinitely great. God made an infinite number of things. St. Thomas Aquinas points out, and we know from our faith, God is infinitely good. He could not make one infinitely good thing because couldn't make something equal to himself. Therefore, he made an infinite number of good things. So no matter how powerful a microscope, they're never going to find the smallest particle, which they call now the God particle. And no matter how powerful of a telescope, they're never going to find the farthest star. There is a farthest star, but they're never going to find it. So the fact is that the universe is finite and limited, but it is composed of an infinite number of things. It's the nature of God. We can know that by what God said and by the nature of things. Philosopher, therefore, is above the scientist and helps keep him from getting out of hand. When the scientist won't listen to the philosopher, he gets into trouble. Just like when the state won't listen to the church, they're going to get into trouble. You're going to have a homosexual world like we do now. You're going to have transphagites all over the place. You're going to have all kinds of problems on your hands and all kinds of immorality and all kinds of abortion and all kinds of evil simply because the state won't listen to the church. And life will become more and more unbearable and become more and more evil. The same is true with all the sciences. If the philosopher and the theologian are not watching things from above, everything is going to go to hell in a handbag. And it's going to get very bad. Right? But in any case, I think we will take a little break here. and we'll pick up again. What's really kind of with the seminarians? We start, I can begin the class and go for 3 hours straight, and then we go down to lunch. So, and then I used to have guys that sign a ringing the bell to get me to stop, but I don't even hear the bell anymore. I've totally tuned it out. Right. So, but in any case, we'll take a little break here. 1:15, we'll take a little bit, maybe a 15-minute break, and then we'll pick up a little bit. And also, like I say, later on, we want to cover a few other things. It's, like I say, the nature of faith, and then heresy and unbelief. Trying to get to that. I don't want to go on too long with it. And then the doctrinal declaration. I'll probably put that up on the board here and see what the big the Society of St. Pius X put out. Who saw these? I saw all three of them. You see the Traditio? Saw those things. They put out 3 videos on the society. I'm tempted to show one of them, but I don't know. It's just painful. It's interesting because it's nice, but it doesn't show its purpose. It's just nice. It's not evil. It's not bad. One thing I will say about the thing, in volume 2, there are 3 volumes. The history of the Society of St. Pius X. First one is about studying for the priesthood. Second one is missionaries. And the third one is, I don't know what it is. It's kind of a continuation of the second one, only more Wamatopian. And in the second one, they bring up 7 different missions in the Philippines. They bring up of the world missions of the Society of St. Pius X, they bring about 15 or 18 of them. And 7 of them are my brother's missions. 7 of them, Father Tim Piper. And guess how many pictures of Father Tim Piper are there? 0. Actually, I found 1. They said there was 1 where you can see his back. So there's 0 pictures of Father Tim. And how many interviews with the guy who built all those missions and who runs them? 0. Father Sa, the interview, he's a good priest. He has got a voice problem. He's a good Filipino priest, and Father Sa. I remember I was stationed in the Philippines, and one of the missions I purchased it and built it, and then the other ones, this is my brother fixed up the one that I started, our priory in Davao, and then the other ones, and they're it makes the society look very good in this missionary work. The only really missionary part of the whole thing, only the missionary is not in it. My brother is gone. They have interviewed multiple priests, and you know, and then and they have little pictures of the missions. And it's interesting, even token African priest, like one of the African priests that we know there, he's a 3rd-class citizen, and you know, but he's Father Martin. He's mentioned in there, you know, and they consider him like a high priest, and they only ordained him. He's the only Nigerian priest we have in the Society of St. Pius X. We have 2 Nigerian priests in the Resistance. And they kicked them all out. They didn't allow them to be ordained. There are 2 guys, for instance, there in that mission. I met a couple of them who have been getting ready to go to the seminary now for 20 years. 20 years. And they're still brothers, not real brothers, but just lay workers there in the mission. And they're going to be there another 20 years. Another one guy, he's about 47 years old or something. He went to go to become a priest when he was about 27. And he's still there. Sacristan, and never goes. They never sent him to the seminary. I think that that's a good question. I think that a lot of them, there are 2 reasons. And one of them is that they say, we have people come to the seminary. In the seminary, people come and go all the time. But if you come to the seminary, so you come here to Kentucky to the seminary, you come to Wisconsin, you go down to the seminary, you stay here for 2 years, you leave, goodbye. 6 months, you leave, goodbye. If you come from Nigeria, or you come from the Philippines, or you come from Africa, you got to pay $10,000 to get you over here. So when you come over here and you stay for 2 weeks and you say goodbye, I go, so, and then, or it doesn't work out, so they get, quote unquote, strict careful, more than they should be. So remember, in the seminary, there are guys that come in that are complete idiots, and they turn out to be okay, and they make it to the priest. These come in complete geniuses and look really holy and look really perfect, and you get expelled in 6 months. And so you can't tell when you enter. That's why it's 6 years. You have the training, of course, but almost anybody can handle the training. But you take 6 years to see who makes it and who doesn't, and you can't know when they first arrive. I was a missionary in India. I was a missionary in the Philippines, and now, of course, in Africa. And would watch so many of all our guys. They would never. They said, "Yeah, it's one of those things that we should have a seminary in Nigeria. We should have a seminary in India. We should have a seminary in the Philippines, and we never built one in the SSK. Never did. And many priests tried to do it. And I would say India, Africa, are similar to America in the sense that the majority of Americans have never handled life outside of America. Some can, majority can't. That's the way that most countries. There's tons of vocations in India, tons of vocations in the Philippines, and tons of vocations in Africa. Way more than here. That's just the way it is. And now it's less than before. Now they're losing vocations like crazy, but there's still more than here. And they would never build. Many of our priests tried to build a seminary, tried to build a monastery, tried to build in the Brothers of the Bishop. We built one in the Philippines, but they never really done much with it. And so I mean, I was at that Brothers of the Bishop in the Philippines. It's useless. I mean, there's some good guys there, but some I want to send to the priesthood, but they never allow them to go. So one reason is they're worried about the money. Second reason is that there is infiltrators in the SSPX trying to kill us from within. And there are real guys. I know some of them, right? So they're real guys who are not letting us develop. We have places we've got pens on the map, so it looks good for the picture, sort of. But yes, Ms. Lena. Well, Father Couture, he was a good superior. He was my superior in the Father Couture. Father Couture is all over this video, by the way. Father Couture is being interviewed like, Father Couture? He baptized that's the problem. Now we know, Rick. What? He was the second priest in Post Falls, Father Couture. He was my superior. And in fact, it was hilarious. One time we had a meeting in South India, and there were like 15 or 16 of us priests at the meeting. And we did the math. 11 of us were stationed at one time in Post Falls. Post Falls, something about Post Falls. There's a bug in Post Falls. Anybody gets stationed there, they're gone. You go and you're gone. You go and you're gone. You go and you're gone. We had 11 of them. There's 11 of us in India. I checked my map. It's pretty far from Post Falls. Post Falls, Idaho, right? 111 of us get over here. One of which is Father Couture, our boss, and Father Summers and myself and Father Giselle. And there was 4 of us, and there were 11 of us, right? In this doggone meeting. And I said, how did that happen? We used to have a saying in the 90s and early 2000s in Post Falls. In St. Mary, our 2 largest parishes in America, St. Mary's, Kansas, and Post Falls, Idaho. We used to have a saying in St. Mary's, the priests don't know the names of all the people. But in Post Falls, the people don't know the names of the priests. So they're always, I just recently said, who's a new priest there? I don't know. It's one of the younger ones. He just got there. I mean, they have churned priests out like crazy. At least 3 times the number of priests stationed at Post Falls and St. Mary's. And St. Mary's is about 6 years older mission, priory. St. Mary's Priory established 1978. Post Falls Priory established 1984. Tons more priests stationed. And now it's still happening. They're just in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. I'm one of them. Father Hugo was there twice. He counts as 2. And, in the resistance, there was like 3 or 4 of us that were all stationed at Post Falls. So, and so it's just, I don't know, there's something about Post Falls. Right? Was the air, Rathdrum? I don't know. But what's Father Grego? He was in the seminary with me. Father Grego, he's still boss, wasn't he? I think Father Grego was still the boss. Yeah, I was ordained priest, and he was ordained deacon in the same ceremony. So when I was ordained priest, he was ordained deacon. But it was Indy Grego, but he's superior there now. But in any case, so the video, did any of you see the Traditio video, the 3-volume Traditio video? And they're like an hour long each. And it's multiple languages. That's kind of like an advertisement of we're great, we're wonderful, we're Catholic, we love Jesus, and we love, stuff too. But without any, you know, why are we here? And what are we doing, right? And nothing really horrible. They're just why do you exist? You got an illegal mass in Post Falls. You got an illegal mass everywhere in the world. Why are you doing your illegal masses? They got to explain that. They don't. Because all their masses are illegal. Well, then they need to explain why they're illegal, why they're doing what they're told by Rome they cannot do. Well, with the same, I think there's a new direction. I don't, they have forgotten why they did it. Archbishop Lefebvre was also interested in a very, very key thought. I remember when I joined the Society of St. Pius X, was born here in Kentucky and raised with Father Hannafin and Father Snyder. I was raised with tradition all my life. My family never left tradition. As far as I know, they've been traditional for about the last 1,000 years. And, and so I didn't know about Archbishop Lefebvre. We found about him as a child. But when I joined Archbishop Lefebvre, it was just, you didn't even know anything about Archbishop Lefebvre. But they have always known about Archbishop Lefebvre. It wasn't important to know anything about him. All you needed to know was, I want to be Catholic, preserve the Catholic faith, follow the Catholic faith. He's teaching it. So I'll go there. One, because he had a great charism he was a saint, of course, but it wasn't like any great miracle worker or, see which person, how many times he levitated today or how many extraordinary things he did. He taught the faith. And it wasn't important to know that he was close to many popes, that he was Superior General of the Holy Ghost Fathers, that he started many, many seminaries, that he he was an electrician. He built the first electric plant whatever in Gabon, and he built bridges. And he was very practical. He got tired of crossing the creek, so he built a bridge. So I mean, he was a very practical, very intelligent, but very practical. You didn't need to know about all of his exploits. Wasn't important at all. It's just the faith. And if you want to keep the faith, do what he did. Teach what he taught, which is the same what the church has always taught. And the new church is not doing that anymore, so therefore we're not going with it. See? And but in any case, I was considering, we're trying to pull out a couple of simple terms from the Trinity. I think what it tries to do is everything is done in their local language. Father Couture, of course, is from Canada. He speaks in French. He has he's French and English are both his native language. He's raised raised with both languages. He speaks English without an accent, except Canadian, and he speaks French without an accent. He's French Canadian. Well, the French don't believe that, but so and then, but nonetheless, he does interview in French. He does his interview in Italian. So they're doing all the different languages to show the internationality of the society. Then you got subtitles. And I think the emphasis is to show how international we are, how big we are, nice we are, good we are, etc. Right? It has some interesting elements in it, but it has no purpose. And the only real missionary part of it was my brother's missions, Father Tim Piper, John Timothy Piper. And then nothing really there. No, not him at all. Right? Not at all. The videos are made by two Swiss young men, but it says in close collaboration with the SSPX. So they watched, Menzingen watched very closely everything they said and did the editing, so that you know that the message being portrayed is the SSPX message. And so, any of you want to hear? It's a documentary in 3 parts. Came out 3 Sundays ago, first part, 2 Sundays ago, second part, last Sunday, the third part. So it's brand new. And it's being put out in preparation for the part of the political preparation for the consecration that's coming up on July the 1st. Yeah. So in any case, maybe better take our 10-minute break. Even 1:15 is we'll have a short thing before that. In fact, let's take a little 10-minute break. Try to do a little break in between. A little sacred prayer. and the cross that way. And the Father, Son, and the Ghost. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost. Saint Vincent of Ferrer, Saint Jude, Lady of Victory, Lady of Sorrows, Lady of Christians, Saint Ignatius. And the next fun activity is, I think we got I think doing a partial cleaning on the porch. Let me check the cleaning out there. Our next fun activity is cleaning out there.